we can go ahead and get started. It's 7:01 according to my clock. So let's start with prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for all of our many blessings. Thank you for your son, Jesus. I pray that you will be with us as we discuss your word, as we discuss problems in our country that need to be dealt with. Help us to see opportunities to make a difference. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I want to start with going back to a verse I think I started with the very first week out of Galatians 3, verse 28. And find exactly where that is here. So there is no difference between Jews and Gentiles, between slaves and free people, between men and women. You are all one in union with Christ Jesus. And so I often, think about people who thought God approved of slavery. How can you read these things? I mean, he does mention slaves there, but slaves are, even in God's context, are to be treated as you would treat yourself. They, not beaten or given substandard housing or often treated worse than you treated your animals, So, it's all in there, and I just don't know, I guess people see what they want to see, and interpret it the way they want it to be interpreted. But to God, we're all the same. There is no difference, which I think will surprise a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Right, we're all human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're all his children.
And the other one comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verse 35. Actually, I'm going to start with 34. And now I give you a new commandment, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. If you have love for one another, then everyone will know that you are my disciples. So once again, we're to love everyone. He doesn't say love only your best friends or love only church members or love only people from your tribe or whatever. You're to love everybody. So that's a very inclusive term that includes everybody. Okay, chapter 17 is about having a diversity in your friendships. And so we can talk about that. I am a person who does not have much diversity in my friendships. And that. So anyway, she said one thing, she says friendship starts with a conversation. And I think that's true. You're not going to get to know someone or become their friend if you don't speak to them the first time. You need to actually start a conversation or be receptive if someone comes up to you to talk to you. She said to be open, listen to what they say, be open to a new experience, and to relax, to decide that you're going to have a good time wherever you're going. If you're going to a party, you're going to have a good time and just relax about it. You may meet someone who's different, you may not, but take the opportunity. If you do, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself that gotta have a black friend, and that. So that's not, because I don't think, I don't know if it's in this chapter, another one, blacks don't want to be your token friend either, just so you can say you have a black friend, they just want to be a friend. She also said that we should be reading and listening to all sorts of different voices. And I will have to say that I don't really, or have not really done that in the past. One of the most interesting things I did, the Y, where we support the battered women's shelter. I actually made a donation on their website. To me, that was easier than going and buying a gift card and, and donating it. So anyway, I got invited to be their 20 21 days of diversity or something like that. So I was listening to all these things, and it was really, I mean, it was totally different things that I would never have looked at. They talked about reparations and where people who want reparations, where they're coming from, and it's different kind of reparations. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be handing everyone money. There was a bunch on the plight of indigenous people, Native Americans in this country, and how they are treated. There was a lot on what they called climate racism because of zoning and other things like that. Most minorities tend up living in the places no one else, wants to live, where there's either like more flooding or there's more pollution or you're close to a bunch of plants where the water may not even be clear. And another one I listened to that I didn't even realize is how much water insecurity there is in this country. How many people, it's not just in Flint, Michigan, do not have access to good, clean water. That so much of the groundwater, people with wells, it's contaminated. This was particularly talking about California, which I wouldn't have thought that would have been a problem there, but all the agricultural chemicals and various other things have leached into the ground. People, they apply too much, no safeguards have really been taken, and that in turn taints the wells. So the water coming out of the well is not safe, so they have to drink bottled water. Or maybe they don't even have access to bottled water. So, and it's mostly minority communities, once again, that are affected in this way. And you always think of that as being a third world problem, but I didn't really realize there are parts of third world problems here in the US, even though I personally have no third world problems, but that's not the case, unfortunately, for a lot of people. And so they just talked about, it was just really interesting to listen to all these different perspectives. And there were a couple of TED Talks and some other things that they brought up all about just different things and how things our minorities are affected adversely by so many things in this country that we just don't think about or realize. The most unfortunate thing about a lot of these is no one seems to have a great solution to how to deal with a lot of these problems. So a couple of the podcasts did have some suggestions, but a lot of them are just pointing out the problems, and I think people are still working on, what do we do about it? And I think they found in Newark, New Jersey now the water's not safe in parts of it. I think that was kind of like Flint. So it's leaking pipes, infrastructure that hasn't been kept up. So there's all sorts of things that cause a problem. And it boggled my mind. I really had absolutely no idea. I knew there's a lot of places that don't have clean water around the world, but I didn't realize that there were people here in this country that did not have readily access to clean water. Of course, with friendships, and the friendships that'll probably last and go further are ones with people that you have common interests in, that you can talk about, not just talking about, race policies, but you have other interests that you can converse with people. And if you think about most of your better friends that you spend more time with, these are people who enjoy some of the same things you do and things like that you want to hang out with. Any other comments about that chapter? Anything you want to say about? And she's not saying, of course, go knock on doors to find a Black friend, but be more aware of the opportunities that you may have to make a friend that you just would not have noticed because you weren't paying attention. And I guess that's what I really need to do. So
this has made me think about, what do I want to do now that I can broaden my friendship base? Because church is my primary social realm these days. And so what can I do to to have interactions with folks, because I used to have work, and I had several Black friends at work, but now we don't see each other.
Yeah.
So, or see each other infrequently, and so it's made me think about being, try to do something. I know Cassie Price had. There was a mentoring program with inner city youth that she was involved in, and I wanted to do, and so I putting that on my radar, or volunteering with Safe Harbor, the domestic violence shelter that the Salad Group supports. So doing something along those lines. So so getting me to really think, so that I have the opportunity. And when I worked at the quilt shop, there were several Black customers that I wished I had the opportunity to really spend time with.
Right.
Because every time they came in and we got to talking about stuff, I just always, there were several folks, white, Black, men, whatever, that I wished I could have had more time to
Yeah,
spend.
I think it comes down to common interests. So, I moved here because I, quote, had family here. And then after moving here, realized that all of my family's interests are here, like kayaking and zip lining and doing things that I never do, bungee jumping. And, when I was in Richmond, I went to the museums, I went to our wonderful Goodwills. That was my thing. And I moved here and discovered I can't do any of that here. So it definitely comes down to, if you go places, if you go to a museum, and you start talking to people there, you can make friends there. If they're of a different race or of a different background, okay. But I think the friendship will first be built, like Cathy, you said, on, your interest around quilting, your interests around something, and then it kind of grows from there. So it's definitely a common interest thing, because I should have thought about that.
Anyone else have any comments or anything?
We would love to have Claire move back.
That crosses my mind over and over and over. And all I can say is I don't want the housing market to correct. But if, unfortunately, it does, you'll be like, what is that? That's Claire, like, running and pulling her car behind her, fully loaded with all her stuff, coming down, I-81. Look at that. That's fascinating. So we'll see. I say God knows this. God knows what will happen for me, and I just have to, it'll all be all right.
I found, if you, in the book on page 182 at the very bottom there, it says, as we mentioned earlier, this idea is the foundation upon which this book rests, and that's having diverse friendships. By asking good questions, listening carefully to one another, and reflecting on what was said. We are not the same people we were 5 years ago. She's talking now about her friendship with John in the book. It hasn't always been a smooth ride. We have both said things that were offensive and needed an apology. We have both said things that were hard to hear, not because they were insensitive, but because they were true. But these occasional difficulties fall on a cushion of trust and respect that has been built up over the years. So what she's talking about, you may want to not delve in with all the racial problems. It's the first time you meet a Black person. You need to build up some trust that they can, trust opening up to you and things like that. So, and it just takes time to build, and I think that's very true. But Cathy, I know what you're talking about, because I haven't worked in years. And even the jobs I had, I'm trying to think, there were not many minority kids, because I did substitute teaching, and the way that school lines were drawn, they were basically all white schools. So So most of my friendships are from church and a few in the neighborhood, but it is hard to find where, because I'm not real outgoing. And I do not go up to strangers and talk to them. My husband does that, but I do not do that. And that,
Sounds like John and I.
so, but I haven't met a lot of people because Bernie does go up and talk to, talk to just about anyone. But I just, and I don't see myself, I don't know if I really could change. I think it would be so awkward doing it. I feel so uncomfortable. I don't know if I'd ever get over how many times you would have to do that to feel comfortable. I just don't know.
There, this must have been a couple years ago. And yeah. So there is a program in Richmond, the Richmond area, the Richmond metropolitan area, where churches of different faiths and different backgrounds from all around the city come together. And so representatives from the different congregations meet together and look at particular social issues in the area and sort of build a consensus about which ones as a group they want to try to address as a community. And this might get more into the next chapter, but, and Cindy might remember the name of it, but at the time that I first heard about it, for whatever reason, I didn't think I had time to do it, but it still comes back to me. Of course, as a social worker, you're always listening, and I'm at the more conservative end of social workers. Anyhow, but that is something that has come to mind several times over the past week. And Cindy might remember the name of it.
We have something called the interfaith. And before COVID, we met probably once every couple months. And it was Islam, the Jewish, yeah. And
yeah, I used to be part of that years ago.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I like it. It's always
oh, good.
very
Well, that was one group I wondered if it was still in existence, and so because
yes,
Pat Mays from 7th Street has long been very active in that group. I
yeah.
don't know if she still is or not. But that's a fascinating group. I know I went to several things, and then the trialogue. That, of course, it didn't happen last year or this year. They're in the Bon Air community. So hopefully next spring it'll get to occur between the Islamic Center of Virginia, the Jewish community, and then the Christian community. And the few of those that I went to were just fascinating.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of those. They were really interesting.
Yeah. So
Was that the same group that Kitten Whitlow?
Yes.
Yes, Kitten talks about it often.
Okay. I know, because I never got to go to any of those either, and I wanted to, but
Yeah, there's only 3 of them. They're within probably about a 5-week session or something like that.
And it's usually this time of year.
Yeah, and a lot of times I just was out of town or I wasn't able to go. But when I did go, I did enjoy. Enjoy being there.
Yeah.
So, any other comments on chapter 17? Which brings us to chapter 18, nudging the system. And she talks about Octavia Spencer and Jessica Chastain. And I thought I had no idea that Black actresses were paid a whole lot less than white actresses. I knew, generally speaking, white actresses are paid less than men. But I did not realize there was such a racial disparity. I thought most of it was based on your popularity and box office pool, those who they think can bring in more people to the box office. I thought usually got higher pay. So I don't know what they
The
exactly.
help wasn't that many years ago to know that
No, for
there
the,
was that big a disparity that Octavia Spencer's income pay increased 5 times. I was like, whoa, because she was pretty well known at that point.
yes.
She wasn't an unknown. So that was a real eye opener for me as well, that there was that big a disparity, because that's
Mhm.
even bigger than between men and women. So,
Yeah,
And so what she's talking about is Jessica Chastain did what she calls nudge the system. She has a sphere of influence that she has some influence on. And so she took her influence and did something about it. Now, whether it was just for that movie or whether it's nudged it a little bit further so it's more equal pay in all movies. But there needs to be a starting point. Almost all these things, when you start to change things, there has to be a first time and hope that it builds on it. And so what she's talking about, all of us have some spheres of influence. And what they suggest we just pray about it so that we see where we have influence. And to maybe write down or think about where do you have influence? And then and I think about that. I think I have some influence in our church, but I'm not sure, other than here at my house, I don't sure I have that much influence on, a whole lot of other.
I know, it's like I thought about that and I thought, well, I have influence over Baxter, and then it stops pretty much there.
I thought a couple of times about that kind of thing over the past few weeks, and I can't remember what the issue was now. That I went, and it was fairly recent, just in the past couple of months, that I wished I had called. It was some issue that I wish I had called the TV station or something, and just to say, hey, or the county, I can't remember what it was. Maybe it'll come to me in a few minutes. But to say, hey, I'm a white woman in this community, but I am very concerned about this issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point in our lives, most of us don't have a career that we have to worry about. And so I find myself feeling perhaps a little bit braver about speaking up for things. Because at this point, I don't really have any financial risks, to speak up on different issues.
Yeah.
And I know through the years, there have been several issues, reading the paper and stuff, where old white women have spoken up on behalf of minority issues and have made a difference.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting at our Monday book club that Brenda Kidd was there, and she's like, well, I don't have any influence over anybody. And, Jamie challenged her to think about, you probably do.
Uh-huh.
And she said, well, the other day I was at the grocery store and there was a black woman in front of me and we were waiting and it was taking forever. And another woman just came charging by us. And we kind of both looked at each other like, did that just happen? So she was saying how she had this moment with a black woman in the grocery store. And she's like, maybe that made a difference. Maybe somebody saw me being kind and reaching out. And, I think everybody can set an example when they're out and about too, the way you treat people, like you said, and maybe speak up when you see something that's not right. So I think we all have some sphere of influence, even though we don't think we do.
Yeah, I have an unusual situation at with work right now, that one of the assistant principals, who is black, but during her teaching career taught very motivated honor students throughout most of her teaching career. She taught honors classes. And, when you teach honors classes, you get really highly motivated students. And she really struggles for these kids who come from, who are not as motivated, who have more socioeconomic issues going on in their lives, she really struggles with those. And I find myself having to try to get her to wait a minute and think about, you know, what is going on here. So,
I understand that totally, because all my life I wanted to be a teacher. And I get to college, I do all stuff. And then I student taught, and I'm about to graduate. And I realize I don't like teaching. And, and I'm about to get married, I'm about to graduate. And because when I was thinking about going to be a teacher, I thought about really just teaching a room full of me's, because I was in mostly honors classes, and you had no problem getting people to talk and discuss things, and you know, they were motivated to do it, and they wanted to be there. And so then I was student teaching in a history class. Well, there may have been 2 people in there who wanted to be there. No one else wanted to be there. There was a huge range of academic abilities. And I just had a really hard time reaching from people who almost needed to be in special ed to people who could be in honors classes, and to find something to work with all of them. And I just found it extremely difficult. And of course, found out, you know, you don't get the honors classes right away. You know, you have to work the lower ones, and the honors classes are kind of a reward for, you know, for years of teaching. So, and then burnout, we moved around a lot and other things. So I never did really, I did, you know, substitute teaching. But yeah, I was very disappointed. I thought, you know, college, what they really need to do is the very first semester, they need to send you out to student teach.
Jamie, Jamie, you just literally changed my life. Okay, you said you didn't have influence. I thought I was the only person who went through 4 years of college for teaching and did my student teaching in an amazingly gifted high school, and then got assigned, because in New York, they assign you a school if you request it. I got assigned to a school that when I went to look at it, had several of the ground floor windows broken out over the summer. And I lasted 3 months and went into art without a degree, and have spent my entire life wondering if anyone else had ever made that mistake, or I was the only one who didn't
no.
understand
no,
what the
you're not.
reality was until I graduated, and reality hit me between the eyes. Thank
They
you,
really
Tammy.
need to start, because quite frankly, you don't get that much out of the education courses they teach at college. Quite frankly, they're mostly common sense type stuff. So really anyone out of high school could go in and do some student teaching in junior high or whatever, you know, supervised obviously, and get some idea of what it's really going to be like. But I didn't have, and I won't listen to people either. I mean, people I talked to them. I made several mistakes. One was majoring in history, even though I enjoyed it immensely, but they don't need history teachers. Whereas if I had majored in math or science,
Right.
I would have been able to find a job.
and that's still true.
And, but I wouldn't have listened to anyone telling me that. So, so my biggest problem, and one reason why I really haven't minded not working, I don't know what to do with myself. I mean, job wise, I have no idea what kind of job I would like to do or that I would enjoy doing. And since we moved around a lot and financially I haven't had to work, I just haven't worked. The only time I have worked is when a couple of times when Bernie's lost his job for a couple of months. I do temporary work, you know, I've gotten out, but I have no idea what I want to do. It's like, what should I have majored in college? I have no earthly idea in that. So anyway, that's my, and that. So anyway, oh no, yeah, it was being in the classroom, finding not everyone's like me in the classroom. Well, that was just a shock. I'm not sure why it was a shock, but it, but it was.
I think that teaching in a gifted program is easy teaching.
No, I don't think so. You
necessarily.
do have to prepare. You have to do a lot. But see, I don't mind that, the preparing, but I need someone when I ask a question to talk back to me, answer and start a conversation in the classroom. I'm not what I would call super creative. And so they want you to come up with all these cutesy ideas of how to present the information. And mine is, no, I just want, I enjoy learning history, stuff like that. You don't have to come in costumes or things like that to get me interested. And I'm just not that kind of teacher. So I often thought I really should have majored in math. That's much more straightforward. They're not asking you to dress in costumes to come and teach the math and that sort of stuff. So I probably would have done much better in a different discipline.
Wonder why, when you get into a school that is difficult to get the students to engage, they're the ones that need it almost the most because
Oh, I understand that. I'm just saying, I didn't seem to have the ability.
yeah, it really takes, I guess, a special kind of individual, not just a good teacher, but a special kind of person to be able to reach people.
I think that's very true. And I just didn't seem to have that. Plus, I couldn't keep discipline. So you put that in the classroom because I looked younger than the kids I was teaching.
Yeah,
So-
I had kids that were way taller than me,
Oh.
and the discipline was not going to happen, and they knew it. And it was just,
I don't know if I do better now that I've had children, be able to keep order in the classroom, but I sure couldn't keep it back then. That's another thing. Maybe if I'd majored in elementary education, where I tower over the students, I would have.
Same thing.
Oh, no.
I had the same experience in elementary. I was like, oh, it's going to be, and I was like, oh, so yeah, it was the very same experience.
So then I had a friend tell me that once you get through the first year, you get into it and you're okay. So maybe if I had gotten a job right away, I would have gotten into it and figured out how to do it. But it didn't come naturally to me to get. See, I don't mind teaching Sunday school and stuff because people in Sunday school, they want to be there. They're interested, even ones who maybe don't want to talk during class, they actually want to be there and listen. And you usually have several in the class who are more than willing to, talk and add to the discussion. So I'm fine with those. I don't have a problem with those. But anyway, so at least you found something else to go into, Claire. You found art. I didn't. I have no artistic talent, no musical talent. I'm sure I can organize very well. That's what I should have. And I like being in control, so I could have done that too. But not
well, I just keep saying, I'm going to figure out pretty soon what I want to be when I grow up. So maybe we're both at that stage.
Yeah, I'm still at that stage. Yeah. So and I'm not sure I'll ever actually figure it out. But anyway, that's so on page 191, let's see what I have marked there. Oh yeah, I think that's kind of what someone's saying here, that you do not have influence in every space or in seemingly big ways should not be a source of disillusionment. You have influence in some spaces. That means you have the potential to have an impact. Don't forget that many small impacts, when combined, can lead to real, lasting, and substantial change.
Yeah.
I also think sometimes, and I think there's a thing in the gospel about it where someone plants a seed, but someone else reaps the thing. And I think sometimes you may plant seeds and you don't really realize that you have touched someone and made them think, and you never see it, but you have. And I think just what someone said, being kind and nice to everyone you meet, I think is another thing that's a good example and has an impact on people. Because if someone's been nice to you, on the street, something like that, or smiled at you, it lifts your spirits. It makes you more want to smile at the next person, who comes along and things like that. And so my biggest thing is because of where I live and where I hang out and do that, I don't have many chances to run into people, minorities of any kind to have interaction with. I guess I should look, like you're talking about, Kathy, organizations and things that I could get involved in that would give me those opportunities that I don't have at home.
Well, like what you did with the battered women's shelter and that series of podcasts, and what that did for you. Those kinds of things are a big step. Yeah, it's doing those little, what seem like little things, but they help to broaden our world.
Yeah.
They help to broaden our world.
And this has actually changed my mind on a lot of things that I didn't think it would, but it has. So I've well, let's see. Was there anything else? The thing about question number 2 on page 194, it says, do you agree with the underlying assumption of this chapter that if enough people nudge the system will change? Or do you think it needs more than just a bunch of nudges? Not that the nudges won't change things, but to really make truly meaningful change, does it need to be more than that?
I think nudges matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm becoming more open to talking with politicians and letting them know what I think as an old white woman,
Mm-hmm.
So, so those little kinds of things, I think, do help.
Yeah, the one starfish back into the ocean thing.
Right. For a lot of minority folks, including Hispanic, refugee, folks from other countries and stuff, having somebody make eye contact and speak, just openly with them in a real honest way, just to say, hello, how are you, makes a big difference, because oftentimes they don't get eye contact from other people. Other people don't speak to them.
Now I do that, because sometimes when you're out shopping, you do see minorities, things like that, and I always say hi and look at them.
Those little things
I do that. I don't really engage in what I call
it
conversation.
helps them feel like it's okay for me to be in this place. It's okay for me to be in this grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay for me to be in this restaurant. I think about when I was working in Louisa. Of course, I retired in 2015. It wasn't until the last couple of years I worked out there that Black people would go to eat in restaurants in the county.
Mm.
They used to drive to Charlottesville or to Richmond to go out to eat because they were not welcome in there weren't that many restaurants, but the restaurants are there, they weren't welcome. And that's only 10 years ago. So it's those little acts of reinforcing that, hey, it's okay for you to be here.
And that's why I think things are getting better.
Mm-hmm.
It seems slow, but I think things are improving. Of course, we still have a long ways to go, and there's a lot more problems than I even realized there were. So yeah. Any other comments on 18 about nudging the system? And that brings us to our last chapter, chapter 19. And I kind of summarized this about it's the importance of maintaining our own spirituality, not to forget keeping in contact with God as we're trying to make a difference for people. And she starts out discussing people I'd never heard of who were activists in the civil rights movement. Because the names, Jim Lawson, Diane Nash, Bernard Lafayette, C.T. Vivian, James Bevel, Gloria Johnson, Curtis Murphy, Rodney Powell. I had never heard of any of them.
I haven't either.
They were totally unfamiliar to me. And of course, I always knew there were a lot of ones who weren't famous, because if you see them all marching, obviously not everyone in that march is well known or famous like Dr. King was. So So she asks, knowing that ordinary people helped with the civil rights movement, does that give you any? Let's see how she actually worded the question on 206. How does your vision for your own activism change when you remember that most of the leaders of the civil rights movement were just normal people who were youngsters, grew up, got married, sometimes got divorced, and eventually had regular jobs? They were just this being civil rights activists was just a part of their life, but they weren't well known, but they wanted to be involved and wanted to make a difference, and so they did. So does that make you think you can do more?
Well, what always strikes me is that not only was it such a difficult thing to get involved with, but also that the reactions were so nonviolent. And it was truly like Christ's teaching, you know, if they slap you, turn the other cheek and offer that one. I mean, to first stand up and then participate in something in that is difficult enough, but then not to react violently when you're abused in that situation is just amazing.
Oh, I agree with you. I think it's, I don't know if Martin Luther King was just influenced by his own Christianity, that, you know, nonviolent, or Gandhi's example, because he started the, you know, nonviolent protests against, or for Indian independence. And then I think about South Africa. The whites there were definitely in the minority, and they obviously treated the native people horribly. And the fact that there weren't race wars and bloodshed, to me, is very amazing. And they had people who stepped up like Mandela and Desmond Tutu and that to be leaders, to try to make sure that this was peaceful transition, that this did not turn into a, you know, a bloodbath. And it does amaze me that they would, you know, that it stays peaceful. Another reason why I wouldn't have gotten involved in this is basically I'm a coward and do not want to get hurt. So, you know, I would not have shown up for those things. So it was funny. My daughter, who's totally different than I am, I don't know if any of y'all remember her and her purple hair and stuff like that back when purple hair wasn't popular. But she got out after with the protest there in Chicago and was marching and stuff. And she said what they wanted was for the white protesters to be between the blacks and the policemen, because they didn't think the policemen would shoot whites. And she said that's what they really wanted was, you know, for the, I thought that was.
That's a pretty powerful statement.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
But she got out there and she said, you know, of course there were some people who looted and that, but for the most part, she said it was very peaceful, the protest there in the city and that. So, let's see what else. I also thought, I mean, like she says, we need to maintain our spirituality. We need to stay in prayer. We need to commune with God and listen in order to have really the strength and God's help to help make changes. And I think that's very true, that you need to, it's something you need to work on. You just can't let it go and not ever do anything about it. She also was talking about, which I had never thought about until I guess a couple of years ago in Sunday school, someone said something about the kingdom of God is now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought, no, kingdom of God is after the second coming. You know, that's when the kingdom of God. And I think it was Danny who was teaching the class. He says, no, he says the kingdom of God's now. So we reread the passage and darn if it didn't say that. You know, after all that, the kingdom of God is now, you know, it's already started. It's obviously has not reached its fulfillment, but it is so what she calls already. It's already, but not yet, because it's not not complete. We still have a long ways to go. And I think that is very true. The other thing I thought was interesting was Jonah, when they talked about people's, I guess, talking about attitudes when you want to do changes or when you're doing stuff. Basically, I think she was kind of saying, you need to want to do this. This has to be something that you feel is important, because she's talking about, Jonah not only did not want to go to the Ninevites, and so he ran away, but God caught up with him anyway. And so finally he decided to go. But even when he got there, in his mind, he was hoping they would not repent, because he really wanted to see God destroy them and wipe them out. So then when they repented, well, he was very unhappy about that, because God forgave him and, didn't destroy them all. So he goes up on a hill or whatever and pouts basically about it, that this didn't happen. And so I think we need to see that there's a need and not, I don't know, not fight against it. I'm not sure exactly what the whole point of her bringing up Jonah was, but anyway, I thought that was interesting.
No.
And then, of course, she also talked about Paul and all that he went through, to preach the gospel. He had a lot of suffering and stuff to go through that I don't think I would have been able to. And then another part, of course, I really like, because it's famous, but I think it just says so much, is the excerpt they had from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech there on 202. As I say to you today, my friends, though, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And of course, I think that is ultimately the goal. And sometimes I wonder, with such the emphasis that the politicians and everyone put on skin color these days, I mean, it's the only thing they talk about. Is that a stage we need to go through to get to a colorblind society, or does that not help us move along? I'm not sure.
I know, I've wondered that too. And what's come to mind several times in recent weeks are some episodes from the original Star Trek series, where they would visit different planets, and how there were a couple of different episodes. Of course, I can't remember well enough to quote them. Maybe Susan can, but where the society on these planets that they visited had really done some deep soul searching, about disparities among their populations and how where they ended up with that. And I can't help but hope that our planet at some point will reach some of those points as well.
That's yeah, I don't know. It's do we have to pay a lot of to skin color to make sure that they get the opportunities? Should we do that more unconsciously? Know that we're looking for more people of color to do something, but not bring it up constantly, that we're hiring them only because they're, because of the color of their skin instead of their ability, to do the job. I just don't know. I don't know if it's helpful or harmful, but I know it's definitely what we're going through in the United States today because it's
Right. Jean, you must be cooking a big dinner.
No, I'm getting my little dog's dinner ready.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you all could hear me.
Well, I'm glad he's getting ready to eat. So,
Well, we're really late tonight because the plumber was here and, then I was on the phone and it's just not the afternoon that I wanted, but anyway. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
So do I need to mute myself?
In talking about solving the race issues, according to CBS News, in 2043, whites will no longer be a minority in the United States. Majority, excuse me. So
Yeah.
you remember the thing about being nice to people when you're going up the ladder because it can be a lot harder coming down.
Yeah, because you're gonna
Yes.
meet them again coming
You
down.
might reap what you sow.
yeah. I mean, there are several, I know of several schools here in Henrico that there is no racial majority in the schools. And so they're so diverse, There are several schools that have over 20 to 30 ethnic backgrounds within
Wow.
James River in Chesterfield has a tremendous diversity within their student body as well. But so if you haven't spent much time in schools in diverse neighborhoods, that's something and I have been amazed in some of the schools that I've been in, what that's been like to see that level of diversity.
I wonder if that helps some though. If you're not in the majority, you need to learn to get along with, because there probably will not be any one separate ethnic group that'll be the majority. It's probably going to be a mix of Hispanics, Blacks, Native Americans, Asian, whites. So I don't think anyone will be like 51% or more. It's going to be all mixed up.
Having lived in the county and now living in the city, there's been, I think, a lot of thought or outspokenness from county people about the reason the city is mismanaged is because of the minority leadership. And, I've heard that, even implied from, people in our church that, well, the city's so messed up because the minority council, the minority mayor, things of that sort. Looking at our tax base, we pay $1.20 per 100. Henrico pays 80 something per 100 and Chesterfield 90 something per 100.
97, I think.
Yeah. But I just have heard that for as long as I can remember, that it's the minority leadership of Richmond that's always making a mess of the finances and the schools and, everything going on.
Well, they have a lot more challenges than a lot of other places. I don't think of it as being because they're minorities. I just think that a lot of inept people get elected, manage to get elected, who or just don't have the experience, at least at the beginning, to help. And a lot of these questions, we don't have answers to how to solve them really yet. We're, people are still struggling, still trying to find ways to, the thing I always, when we first moved here, was the city schools. They would hire a superintendent, keep him for a year, fire him for a year, after a year, have to pay him for 5 years because that was a contract they signed with him, and then still had to go get another superintendent to actually run the schools. Now, I don't know. I don't think that has anything to do with the people being minorities. But there's someone did not do a good either background check or I don't know what, but I just thought, what a waste of money, be basically paying for two superintendents at the same time. It just seems like it could have been managed better, but I would never blame that on, the color of because it's not just minorities. At least when we moved here, it wasn't just minorities running the city of Richmond.
It's a pretty complex issue, I think. Yeah.
And I think it comes down to the resources money-wise that you have to work with, because I remember when I was student teaching at the the really good school, when I would take the kids to gym, there were, and you opened up the closets, there were all kinds of toys and balls and things to play with. And when I went to the other school, I will never forget the day we went for gym for the first time, and I opened up the closet and one rubber kickball was in there, and that was it. And I went, oh, Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
Right.
Hmm.
Yep. No, the level of overcrowding in some of the Eastern Henrico public schools would never be tolerated in the western part of the county and would never happen. But it's that kind of disparity. At least here in the Richmond area, it's not as severe as that, but the disparity still occurs.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to rethink how we finance the schools, because they're mostly financed by property taxes, which is going to lead to a lot of inequities. That's why, your better suburbs have better schools, because they have a bigger tax base to get more money.
Kathy, I like what you said earlier about, being us old women can go out there and start trying to push some issues. And I think that it's becoming aware of those issues and making people aware of some of these issues, because I don't know, I'm probably going to get the story wrong, but because I kind of heard it aside from Bud, but there was apparently some young female athletes who, they didn't have hardly any lifting weight equipment.
Oh, that was the basketball tournaments.
Double A last
Right.
week.
And
This
Yeah.
year.
they have all of this equipment.
Mhm.
Yeah, they showed the pictures. It was amazing.
Someone knowing about it and what can happen by spreading that word about something. And it's just like at our church, I mentioned it a few weeks ago about when we find out about a family in need, then how quickly we can get help for that family, and so I think that it's making people wherever we can, wherever we see an injustice or inequity, where we just kind of spread that word and see what happens. It's like spreading seeds we talked about earlier, spreading the seeds, and sometimes it falls on rock and sometimes it falls in good soil, but spreading the word and making people more aware.
Well, maybe that's our sphere of influence.
Yes. It's and we do it all the time at church, becoming aware of something, and it's almost a miracle sometimes. What can
I know
happen.
it's amazing.
Don't talk about things, and when you don't spread the word and you just you're afraid to mention something, that nothing can be done about it. And we're dealing with human social communities here. And I remember Dr. Seuss's book, The Star-Bellied Sneetches, and I also remember in one of my classes in college where they talked about social groups, and how if you have a party and you give in, you have red hats and blue hats, and you got to take one or the other when you come into the room. Eventually, all of the red hat people get together and all of the blue hat people get together. You know? And so it's sometimes it's just the nature of not liking anything different.
Mm.
You know, we're being threatened by anyone different, whether it's male and female or black and white and yellow, and you know, whether it's your race, someone is always going to find something that they don't like about something with some like group,
Mm-hmm.
you know, of people. And it might just be the animal nature of human beings, you know, just like gorillas in the woods and setting up groups and fighting with each other, or anthills, you know, or bees, or you know, whatever. So we're having to fight what the law of survival,
Mm-hmm.
and to be human,
Mm-hmm.
to be, you know, humane.
Yeah.
I have such hope for our future, though, in the next generation. And I've said this before. And Cathy, you were talking about the diversity in the schools. I mean, when I went to high school, there was one black family in my high school. And, you know, I had black friends and in college and my professional life, but there was one black family in my high school. And now, I mean, if the boys have their friends over, it is, I mean, diverse as can be, you know, Muslims and Jewish people and black people and white people. And it's just awesome, you know, that they're just around so many different people.
Mm-hmm.
That is, that it really is, because yeah, kids today are exposed to so much more diversity than we ever dreamed of.
Yeah.
I remember
And they really don't understand all this
my
that's
first
going
grade,
on, you know?
Oh, really? Yeah.
and that was back in the 50s in
Yeah.
my hometown in Kentucky. The only thing that was separated were the deaf school people, you know,
Mm.
the deaf school in town.
Mm.
And it's because no one could talk with them.
Education challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually pretty good back then, because most schools, even in the north, were segregated, not because of the way they draw school lines and things like that to make sure that they weren't too diverse. And that so. I
I think
also
the
love.
hardest thing to fight is like in politics, in political kinds of issues, and creating policies, and where the inequities come up between the poor people and the richer people, and what rights a poor person doesn't have because they're poor, or people who are trying to, you know, I'm really worried about, you know, what's going on with restricting voting now with people. And how dare you restrict the voting of any American citizen? You know, so I can't see how does that happen in this country, but it certainly does.
Mhm.
I heard that, you know, with Georgia, that Coca-Cola's headquartered there and Delta's headquartered there. And, you know, there started to be some talks about maybe we should boycott, you know, Coca-Cola and Delta. And the Delta CEO came out, you know, very quickly, you know, against it, very vocally against the law in Georgia or whatever. But yeah, I think opinions and
Hit them in their pocketbook.
yeah. Well, the things they used to, you know, the NCAA used to cancel tournaments, you know, and I think in North Carolina they canceled out something when North Carolina was having something about the transgender bathrooms.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, that really rankled a lot of people in North Carolina, that, as far as the NCAA not have their tournament here. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that really upset.
Yeah, yeah.
That got a lot of people thinking that before had maybe not said anything.
Mm-hmm. On page, at the bottom of page 203, they had, this is, do for one what you can't do for all. It's brilliant advice. We cannot encourage everyone, but we can encourage someone. We cannot befriend everyone, but we can become friends with somebody. So most of us aren't in the position of power and leadership where we can make huge, great, big changes, but we can make small changes and being kind and encouraging to people. So
Is Andy Stanley Charles Stanley's son?
Yes.
Ah, okay, I thought so.
I had no idea. Any other real comments on, she also ends in, I think, what I call a positive note that all this has been won. I mean, God's going to win. Eventually, all these things will work out because God is ultimately in control. So, but of course, he needs us to be working to further his kingdom here and now.
I have a sweet story I want to tell.
Okay.
I have a friend who, when I first started working, so this would be 1970, she was first teaching in Atlanta as well, and she was teaching kindergarten. And she said one day on the playground, she heard two of her little girl students speaking to each other. And one said, you know, Miss Faree is white. And the other one said, no, Miss Faree is yellow. She is not white. So I'm sure that they had heard, you know, black, white kind of things in their family, and it wasn't good for Miss Faree to be white. No. So this other little girl had decided that she was yellow and that'd be fine. She could be yellow, but she wasn't white. And I thought that was really, really something to hear in those little kindergarten kids. Yeah.
I did find it interesting because when I was helping with the tutoring there at Red, I think some of those kids had not really had any contact with white people. I mean, your hair fascinates them. The mole on my face, they just couldn't get over that. What is, you know, and things like that. It's just, and they have no filter, you know, they have no problem asking you any, you know, any sort of question. And I never tell them that it's impolite to ask. I just answer their questions. But I think a lot of them actually have probably not had a lot of contact with.
No, I think I shared with you guys my former coworker, Louisa, that she grew up in the Norfolk area. And so she had gone to predominantly Black schools, nearly all Black schools, historically Black college, got her first job working in Black schools. And it wasn't until she came to Louisa and had to work with me that she'd really had the opportunity to develop relationships and friendships with white people. So
Not to work with you, Cathy.
I don't know about that. I think Robin was relieved when I retired, but yeah, but we are still very dear friends, and reading this has made me want to go visit. I haven't seen Robin in a year, so it made me want to go. We're both vaccinated now, so go see Robin and spend some time with her.
Barbara, your story reminded me, and this is not as on point as yours, but it was funny. I was tutoring after school the year after I retired, and I had some third graders. And one day, one of them, we were just in line, and out of nowhere, she said, "Mrs. means that you're married. Miss means that you're not. Ms. means it ain't none of your business." Oh, yes, indeed. Words never. with you. Miss means it ain't none of your business.
None of your business. That's right.
That's actually that's a great way of putting it.
It really was.
Anyway, I wanted to end our study with something from Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. Then I heard the Lord say, "Whom shall I send? Who will be our messenger?" And I answered, "I will go, send me." And so I think that's part of the point of this book too, is not only to make Black friendships, but send me, you know, make me a agent of change. So any other comments or anything else? Anyone?
I think we talked about this, or came up last week or the week before, that if you have the opportunity to go to a regional event for the Christian church or to the Disciple Women's Retreat, that'd be a great opportunity to meet some fellow disciples in Black churches. So our regional moderator is a Black minister, and this is the second term in a row. His predecessor was a Black woman from here in the region. And so there's a lot of leadership being provided within the region from the Black churches.
Yeah, I think I've had lots of opportunities probably to meet Black people and do stuff. I just haven't taken, either I didn't recognize them as opportunities or just did not, you know, do anything about it. So it's, I'm gonna have to try to keep my eyes more open.
Another opportunity for you, if you go to anything at Richmond Hill where you're going to eat, which, you know, would be my favorite way to ever go to Richmond Hill. Everyone goes through the line and then you just go and sit at a table, and there's such a mix, and you can just sit down next to anybody and start to talk to them, and everybody else doesn't know anybody, so they're anxious to speak. It's a nice opportunity for getting to know other people.
I found that at some of the events when we were tutoring at Red, you know, they had, I can't think of the group, you know, they'd have people come in and talk, meet, and often would sit and have a meal. I don't know which, but that was the same thing. You could sit at any table, and often, and I did find myself at a table where I was the only white person at the table. So, see, when I think back, I had more opportunities than I really.
Where was that, Jamie?
At Red Elementary.
Was it Communities and Schools that was having the?
He's the one that Community and Schools would do a little party for all the volunteers.
Yes, and
they would provide the food, and they'd have a little speaker, and we'd be in the library, and yeah.
Yeah, they had about 3 or 4 of those a year, or 2 or 3 or something like that.
I think at least 3, yeah.
Because they usually had the superintendent speak at one of them, I remember. And I enjoyed going to those, and that was a real diverse group that were in these things. And they'd have training sessions too for the tutoring, where you break off into groups and things like that.
I think you're talking about the big Micah group. Did you go to the Micah group? Is that the one?
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, because they did have those educational ones, and they'd have those quarterly. You're right. So they'd be for a year. Yeah, those are really there. I mean, you learn things, plus it's just fascinating to start to see and talk with people from other schools, because you have such an opportunity there. Yeah.
And didn't Cindy mention something about a meeting that she was going to have some interdenominational group, when we were talking about the possibility of maybe partnering with another church?
Yeah, she did say something that she was going to maybe try to look into that or see what possibilities might be out there.
But I think we've probably encouraged people all along to go to the Disciples Retreat and the regional, but maybe we can put out a little bit more, put a little bit more marketing into it, into really getting a group, trying to get X number of people, 10 people, or whatever, up it by 5 people than what we normally send.
Right.
If we can maybe, I'm not sure which committee within within the church might help kind of encourage and plan that, to communicate out and let people know about it,
Outreach.
outreach or whatever, to let us,
Church and
emphasize, here's
society.
disciples retreat's going to happen now. Let's see if we can plan to get a group. The regional ministry is going to be meeting then here. Let's, trying to figure out how we might, from this book study, take some things out to some of the committees in the church to see if we can get some where they might want to move on some things and help all of us kind of come together and become a little bit more exposed.
Mhm.
Well, I think just within this group of 6, 8 people, all of our awareness has been increased about the opportunities, and just even having when we see these events come up, because a lot of it's been put on hold with the pandemic.
Yeah.
But when these events come up, for us to remember and to talk about it with other folks too, and encourage each other to consider attending.
Mhm.
Even that informal kind of discussions really help to move things along.
Yeah, I'll have to try. I've never really gone to, I don't know if I've ever gone to any regional or national one. So maybe I need to start thinking about that. That'd be a
Cool.
good
See?
opportunity for me.
Yeah, maybe we need to go with you.
There you go. See, that's how it happens. How it happens.
So,
But we can't sit at our own little tables. We all have to separate out.
Right.
I think sometimes it's one of the hardest things when you do get in a more diverse group. If you've come with other people, your tendency to stay with the people you came with and not get out
Yeah.
to talk to others, especially if you're not super out.
Yeah, if you feel
So that's where you can pair up and go sit with some other people.
That's what we'll do with you.
That's funny because when I was an elder and we had to take communion to the shut-ins, I always either took Diane Clark or Jean Turlington with me because I knew or Barbara. She's good too. One of the three with me, because then I knew the conversation would not lapse. There would not be any awkward silences. And, the three people could talk to anyone about and that, and just make it seem so much nicer.
And Miss Barbara, you're visiting my mom. I know I always mention this, but it just meant so much to her. It was such a blessing. I can't thank you enough.
Barbara would come home and talk about visiting. Barbara enjoyed it as much as she did. Barbara would come home and
It's my favorite thing in the whole church to do. No committee work. No, just go. But your mother, she was so animated from the first time I met her. I mean, she was just like a little light. And I thought, wow, I was just drawn to her. I was.
Well, it was her, she has what my cousin has, which is the ability to talk to anybody for any reason. When she was very young, she was a dancer she was a professional dancer for when she worked. And for a part of the time she was on Broadway because she wanted to be in the spotlight. She wanted, and when I was very little, she took me to have dance lessons. And the first dance lesson, I sat under the bar, the little ballerina bar. The second lesson, I sat under the bar. The third lesson, the teacher came to my mother and refunded her money.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
So this was so she just loved when you would visit, that just was all joy to her. Thank you.
Well,
You evidently didn't get Mama's dance, Jean.
No, I'm actually adopted. So
oh, wow.
yeah, but it
Osmosis doesn't work.
when I loved that. I loved about people who are just outgoing like that, and I just look at them and go, wow, how do you do that? it's a gift. It really is. And
I think it
brings-
is. I think there's some people who do learn how to do it, to make an effort and do learn how, but there's some that they're just born that way. I mean,
Bernie didn't have to go through training.
no, he didn't. No, he didn't. And I don't think he's ever been shot from what I can tell. No one in his family is. So that's, but the thing that,
Maybe we should have Bernie do a training class for us.
Pretty shy.
yeah, I don't know if it would, I mean, I watch him do it. I still can't do it.
Say, come on, garage and have a beer and that'll loosen you up.
Right.
Maybe that's it. I don't like beer. That is my problem. I guess I need to learn to like beer. But yeah, see, I won't go to his class reunions with him anymore. I went to too many, and because you get there and it was a small school. I mean, they only graduated like 100, and my class was 665 students. So
Good grief. Mine was 65.
so anyway, you get there, and they all know each other. Not only that, most of them had gone from first grade all the way through high school together.
Oh, wow.
And Midland, where I grew up, was a very transient area. The oil company, for whatever reason, transferred people in and out all the time. So most people weren't there. So you rarely went to school, the whole time with any single one person. But anyway, so I get there. They all want to talk with each other. No one knows me. And Bernie's just off in his element talking to all of his friends. And I sit in the corner with nothing. I said, I can sit in the corner at home and watch TV. So that'll be. The last one, I actually just stayed with his family. He went and I stayed with his family, which was nice. But the funny thing I always tease him about is the Myers-Briggs.
Oh, yeah.
He comes back as a borderline introvert on that.
Oh, yeah.
That can't be.
You lied.
No, I'm not lying.
That speaks for my faith in Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
So it's something about certain questions that he answered, I guess they think come from, and I don't know, because he shows me all the things, because there's all sorts of different categories and combinations apparently on it when you score. I've actually never taken it, but it's like, well, that's just wrong.
All those tests, I just don't, they turn me off. I always feel like I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm always in the middle. They have another test which is totally different, but one of the silliest tests is the Miller analogy test, where they say, a Volkswagen is to a grape as a horse is to a dog, or whatever. It's like, what does that mean?
I once had a job interview where the HR director looked at me and said, if you could be any animal in the jungle, which one would you be? And I thought to myself, I'd be out of here.
Oh, goodness.
Oh.
I gotta go eat my supper.
Oh.
Well, thank you all for joining. I have really enjoyed doing this, and I'm glad you all participated, and I hope you enjoyed reading the book. And
It was very good. Thank you,
It
Jamie.
was. Thank you, Jamie.
Yes.
Thank you, Jamie. That
Appreciate
was
all your
great.
time and effort.